Tonight's tactical enhancement is Fuzz. It's a Belgian beer and it's made out of peach. This evening we're playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle. A battle line, 3,100 points per side. 8th edition. Emilio has brought his Orcs and Goblins in all their splendour. And I've brought my trusty favourites of many a year now, the Dwarfs. Righto, Emilio, talk us through what you've got.
Yeah, starting over on the right hand side, we've got Spider Riders. So they're going to come in useful because they move very quickly. And of course behind them we've got our very large Arachnorok spiders. So there's two of them there. They actually have upgrades on them which include flingers. And those flingers have got quite an extensive range. They act as basically catapults. But they do special things.
Lovely.
And these things can climb over the tower and they can climb over and into forests and so on. So very mobile.
Bastards. Alright, what else have you got?
So up here we've actually got the spear chucker, Goblin spear chucker.
I didn't place that tower very well, did I?
And there's a Black Orc bully in there to keep the order of the Goblins so that way they're more reliable when they work.
Alright.
We've also got our squig. There's a little group of squig riders in here, and we've got our Goblin wolf chariots.
Yeah, that's going to be quite annoying.
Yeah, and a very large block of goblins. All up, there are 66 goblins, night goblins, in that particular block.
That's the way to do it. If you're going to do goblins, bring them all.
And we've got the shamans are in there as well. There's a level 2 and a level 3 shaman in there too. You've also got a character in there who's right at the front, and that character is Shaznik, Warlord of the Eight Peaks.
Oh, really?
And he's got an interesting product
bloody great
as well.
Squig with him.
And he's got a big squig with him as well. So they're called a gobbler.
See if I can get a close up of Mr. Gobbler.
Mr. Gobbler.
There he is.
So there's the character.
But, look at that, friendly features. Ooh, too close.
And then the other thing that's going to be hopefully holding up for the whole night is going to be a big block of 29 Black Orcs. Included with the Black Orcs is the Army General and also the Army Battle Standard.
Righto.
And then you've got an absolute horde of Night Goblin squigs, and it's represented there with the squig herders. And there's also in here a hero. I think it's a Night Goblin big boss with a great cave squig.
Rightio. What else we got?
So a couple more spear chuckers on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And I've got some river trolls at the back.
Yep.
Which really probably aren't well positioned now that I know that you've laid out your forces.
Well,
but they'll have to
take miners, so Emilio's become rather protective of his back end. And who can blame him? They like tunneling.
Yeah, so that was just a default position. And of course, my favourites over here are the Snotling pump wagons. So there's a couple of Snotling pump wagons that have been upgraded as well.
Have an unnatural fondness for those things.
So they've got spiky roller and also outrigger, and the outrigger allows them to move even faster.
What's the toughness of those things?
They're looking at them here. Toughness is 4.
Okay, well, at least I can hurt them. Now, would I be right in assuming that there might be some whirling dervishes in these?
Maybe,
yeah. I think I saw some in the box you brought out earlier.
They're just surplus.
I'll have to think about what to do about that. Anyway, so that's 3,100 points of Orcs and Goblins, and quite challenging. Should be a good fight. On the Dwarf side of the table, we've got a bunch of shooters covering the flank, because I didn't know if something nasty would turn up in the back corner. That little barricade there is really to represent shields, so I always outfit my shooters with shields. Longbeards, Roughly 6th edition metal ones, or maybe 5th edition actually, it's gone back a while, but they're metal. I do like putting that unit down at a tournament, they make a nice big clunk when they're deployed. And there's a Thane in that unit. He's souped up with lots of body armour and so forth. Next to that we have 49 warriors with shields and great weapons. Longbeards have also got great weapons and shields. And these guys are led by the standard bearer, who's got assorted things which are designed to help the units and their friends wade through fire in order to get to the enemy. And here we've got a unit of regular warriors, just with shields and hand weapons. I thought I'd take more warriors and less special units today, just for a change. I'm normally loaded up with iron breakers and so on. It also gave me more points for the rest of the army, which is mostly war machines. Now, the general's in this unit at the moment, and he's tooled up with assorted nasties. 298 points worth of general, not counting the beer. Then we have a gyrocopter. That model would be 5th or 6th edition as well. Another unit of shooters, and I made my shields out of balsawood's palisades back in the day. You might notice that the bases are all grey as well instead of brown. I normally do my bases to match this table, but I didn't have this table when I painted this army. I had a grey drop cloth that we'd put across the table. And we've got a flame cannon, what is that? It's a normal cannon, but it's from, I think, the 6th or 7th edition box set. Like same with some of the warriors actually. An old organ gun I bought second hand. It's the only thing I hadn't actually painted myself in this army. 2 more cannon that I got when I bought this army back in 2003, and another block of 10 shooters with shields. That's 3,100 points worth of dwarf. It's a bit unusual for me. I normally rely more on the melee and less on the shooting, but I thought I'll change it up a bit and see how it goes. Emilio and I did the usual thing where we don't know what army the other guy's taking. I've got 3 or 4 to choose between. Emilio's got about 11 to choose between. So we didn't know what we were going up against. So it was a bit of a gamble taking that much of a gun line, and I've got no idea how it's going to go. Anyway, we'll move on now to the dice roll for turn 1. I'll get a +1 because I finished deploying first, and then we'll see who gets to start inflicting carnage first. Okay, I get a 3, goes up to 4. Emilio gets a 3, which stays as a 3, so the dwarfs get the first turn. And, well, hopefully we don't misfire too much so that we do more damage to them than we do to ourselves. We'll check in at the end of turn 1. 3 cannon and an organ gun prioritise their fire on the 2 chariots. And as you can see, there's now 1 chariot. I was hoping to kill both, and I even put in fire from the gyrocopter. You'll notice that the gyrocopter is painted to look like a flying rubber dinghy. That aside, we really didn't have much luck against the other wolf chariot, except that nothing blew up. And for a black powder army, I think I can accept that. So we'll now move over to Orc and Goblin turn 1, and we'll check in probably after the movement phase. It's the end of the movement for turn 1 for the Orcs and Goblins, and while my chopper couldn't get close enough to trigger them during my own move, they just marched right on up, and out came the whirly-dirlies. One of them fell an inch short, the other one crashed right on through that chopper there and knocked 2 wounds off. He's down to 1 wound now. Bit of a sacrificial lamb that, but weirdly he's still alive, so we'll see how long that lasts. I know Emilio's about to pepper him with magic missiles in the magic phase. As for the rest of the movement of the Orc and Goblin line, well, they're a shuffling. The spider horde over here, Swarm, is advancing toward the guard line. This will be an interesting face-off. Really got to fuck them up in a dwarf shooting turn 2, or it's going to go badly. Everything else moved up. I can't see all the Black Orcs because they're in the trees. Clan Macbeth would be very worried right now, I would think. Squig Hoppers, and look at the trolls back there. They had a spot of bother because they were positioned awkwardly, so they're going to have to shuffle out and run up to join the battle later. And the Snotling Pump Wagons, they got Outriders, so they go faster, 3d6 instead of 2. And he decided to use the special rule, which means that for one turn and one turn only, you get to roll an extra d6 for movement. And Emilio, being Emilio, he rolled fucking Yahtzee, as he does. 22 inches, that little bastard came right in front of my handgunners.
And they've got sails as well, so there was the extra dice there.
Right, yep. So they're moving like that. Like something.
Drags.
If the Stig were a Snotling,
he'd be driving.
Anyway, so I've got a lot of shooting to do next turn, or I'm in a lot of trouble. But we're now moving to the Auckland Goblin magic phase, and we'll check in after that and the shooting. In the magic and shooting, they threw everything they had. The magic whiffed. The sticky cannons both misfired. Unfortunately, it doesn't do any damage to them. And 3 bolt throwers shot. Two of them hit their target. And you'll see there's a little gap in the line there where there used to be a flame cannon. Bit of shiny toy syndrome, the most expensive single piece in the whole bloody army. Whacked on 6s and 6s and 6s from the 2 crossbows who were spear chuckers that knocked him out of the game. Just to give you an idea of how annoyed I am. Here's the offending piece here. I was up all night painting this fella sometime in the early 2000s. Wasted straight off the bat.
There's 2.
Turn 1. Oh well, it's now time for some revenge. It's turn 2 for the Dwarves. We'll check in after the movement phase. I was about to say a quick note on Dwarf Movement, but there seem to be some young fellows screaming, motherfucker, motherfucker, get out of the fucking fuck, or words to that effect. Not sure if the camera picked that up, but most distracting. Anyway, so much for the neighbours. I'll just tell you what I did with the Dwarf Movement. Firstly, we moved the gyrocopter from there to just behind the Auckland Goblin lines. The reason for this is partly to get him away from certain doom for no purpose, but also to position him to get shots on this chariot, whilst being pretty much immune to harm from everything except that bloody bolt thrower. Can't do much about the bolt thrower. They're
out of the fire arc, are they?
One of them could probably get line of sight, the other one would be at a wrong arc.
Mm.
But
so there's 2 chances.
Mind you, if you're shooting at that guy, I'm not too worried. More interestingly, all the shooters have stayed still, but I've moved up my whole dwarf line. I was going to try and do a refused flank method, which would have completely shaped the way that the Orc and Goblin line would have had to engage with the dwarf line. I've deviated from that a bit because what I want to do is prevent these Black Orcs from being able to face off against my dwarfs on their own terms. As it is, that unit's so deep that by the time they get to engage these dwarf warriors, they will be effectively still in the forest. So they will not be able to benefit from steadfast. They'll be disrupted. Beyond that, we've moved up this horde. Anything which charges them is in for a meat grinder. And these longbeards have moved up with a bit of an angle, so that if something does charge the dwarf big block before I get there, then I'll be able to try and get a flank charge in. So we're positioning ourselves for the next couple of turns of manoeuvre, charge and melee. Now I'll check in at the end of the shooting phase. Dwarf shooting was not too bad. Now we hopped a whole lot of gunpowder from these handgunners here, plus the organ gun into the spider riders, killed 6 out of 11, and the other ones ran away. They're hiding back here now, scarpering the wrong direction. That was alright, that gives my gun line another turn of grace. We did fire at the other chariot there, which knocked 1 wound off of it. And then the handgunners here also fired that chariot and bugger all. The handgunners here, well, you'll notice there's one less snotting wagon. That went pretty well, they just blasted the hell out of him. So the Stig's dead. And over here we hocked 3 cannonballs all at this one fella. First one knocked 5 wounds off, classic correct shot. The second one went right over the top and landed just behind. I rolled a 10 on the artillery dice for the length of the shot before first impact, so that was annoying. The third cannon I fired at this rolled a 2 for his shot, so the initial impact was short and then he misfired, so it didn't bounce at all. I just needed to roll another 2 and it would have hit.
Not have even killed him.
It probably would have been enough to knock him off, actually, the odds being even, but on the flip side, none of my war machines decided to self-destruct. That's always a good thing, and it's still anyone's game at this stage. We're over to the Orcs and Goblins turn 2. We'll check in at the end of the movement. It's the end of the Orcs and Goblins turn 2 movement, and it's getting up close and personal. They have marched right up to the gun line. Gives me one turn to do some damage before they just basically chew everything up. The Spider Rider's rallied.
Actually, he doesn't need to be so close.
Moving back a bit, is he?
Yeah.
Alright, well, yeah.
Because he can still make the charge distance anyway.
Okay. And the chariot moved up. These fellas moved up. The other pump wagon didn't quite make the distance. Interestingly, Emilio's aligning his army to make the situation favourable for when I charge. Now, I'm not quite sure how that's all going to work out. Now, I'm also pretty sure that I can't actually see those guys in the forest because they're a couple of... Those trolls are moving up. Now, the Orcs have just basically realigned themselves so that he's got a cohesive battle line. And the squeak hoppers have moved back a little bit. Seems to be a lot of jockeying for position at the moment. Now we're going to have to go to the magic and the shooting phase. I'll check in at the end of those and we'll see how we're positioned, whether anyone's going to have the guts to make the crunch next turn. The end of the magic and shooting phase for the Orcs and Goblins. Well, oh dearie me. Somebody's being plucked out of the sky by a bolt thrower. It's bound to happen sooner or later. Other than that, all the other shooting has managed to knocking off a couple of wounds. One of each of these 2 cannon. Emilio is heading for another Yahtzee with a 6 and a 6, and then, oh, thank fuck, you rolled a 1 for wounding this cannon. And
one wound there.
This guy copped it from a giant globule of spider web. Just charming. But anyway, that's the end of Orc and Goblin turn 2. Oh yes, and I should probably mention
The curse.
Yeah, what's it called? The curse of...
The curse is called the Curse da Bad Moon.
Curse of the Bad Moon.
Curse of the Bad Moon.
It took us a little while to read up the rules and figure out how these bloody things work, but basically it got spat out of that unit, cleaned up one of the Goblin fanatics on the way through, killed a couple of dwarfs there, and I lost a couple more to some magical staff that throws out these 6 strength hits.
And it's still in play.
And that bastard thing's sitting there behind my line, ready to go 3d6 inches in whatever direction Emilio chooses to send the next turn. But it's now the dwarf turn, we've got to figure out what to do. So we'll check in probably at the end of... Well, I'll do it at the end of the movement and shooting. Okay, end of dwarf turn 3, and it's been a bit of a... it's been an interesting turn. Okay, so the shooter's over here, knocked 2 wounds off of that pump wagon, it's got 1 left, it'll make a nuisance of itself before it dies. The gunnery managed to wound this chariot, but it's still alive, and I threw a lot at that fella.
Yeah.
Probably about 17 odd shot plus the organ gun, and we only managed to knock a couple of wounds off. The cannon killed one of the giant spiders finally. I realised I put about 5 cannonballs into that thing to knock it off.
Had 8 wounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
I put 1 cannonball into this fella and took 4 wounds off of it. But that's going to make the charge, that guy. And presumably will have to charge the handgunners. So odds are that's just going to make a mangly mess out of them and then clean up the gun line. Now, that's not too big a problem because most of my dwarf line's okay. But I made the mistake of charging these dwarfs in here. The spear knocked off 5, which wasn't too bad. I probably should not have charged them, truth be told. I killed 9 in return with the rank and file. But then my general faced off against
my character,
Skarsnik, Warlord of the 8 Peaks.
Yeah.
Knocked 2 wounds off of him in exchange for 1 back.
But the killing blow was the gobbler who actually does killing blow.
Yes, and of course Emilio rolled Yahtzee and...
well, I got 2.
Well, you got 2.
2 6s.
But out of 3 dice, you got 2 killing blow.
Yeah.
And only saved 1 of them with the ward. So my general is dead. It's very, very annoying. And on that note, we will go to the Orcs and Goblins turn 3. Okay, it's the end of turn 3 for the Orcs and Goblins. Magic didn't do a lot. In terms of the shooting, the spear chuckers
That he ran off to.
going at it like snipers. They've picked off another cannon. Pretty much every turn, the bolt throwers are killing a war machine. With 5s to hit, 6s to wound, and they're needing a 5 or a 6 in order to kill the war machine. So which is pretty much describing the game.
Yeah. Which means I've been doing it 2 out of every 3 dice rolls is lethal.
Yeah. A snotty punt wagon crashed into there, rolled 10 out of a potential 12 and bumped off 9 guys. The giant spider did pretty much what we expected to do, killed with handgunners, that's okay, but then one of my units panicked, so that cannon can't shoot next turn. That's failing a dice roll of a leadership of 9. Shooting, what did my shooting last time? That's it for the shooting. In the melee, basically I'm rolling probably average. Emilio's is Yahtzeeing the shit out of me.
The character and the gobbler are exemplary in battle. They have done so well.
Yeah, that's worth noting that out of their 8 attacks, they're killing like 5 or 6 guys a turn. Yeah, it's not going very well for the dwarves at this stage.
Battle standard, and the general did a lot of damage.
Yeah, the general killed, he had 6 attacks, he killed 5 guys. So that's pretty much the story of this game. So either the odds are going to reverse and I'm going to pull a miracle out of my ass, or it's just going to be a casualty pile for the dwarfs. Still, it's not over. I've still got some guys. We will do turn 4 and I'll check in at the end of turn 4 for the dwarfs. Alright, well it's the end of the dwarfs turn 4 and we're going to call it. This has been an absolute bloodbath at the expense of the dwarfs, and I think if we keep going we'll be lucky to have a beer left on the table. Yeah. Now, I think it's pretty clear that I invested too much in the gun line and not enough in the infantry line.
Yeah.
The gun line could have been worse, but could have been better. Probably don't think I could blame the dice. I think overall I can't really blame my dice for this one.
Can I suggest that what you should have done from turn 1 is take out the Arachnoroks. Put all your cannons on the Arachnoroks and take them out. You were concentrating on some chariots. The chariots don't cost me very much. The Arachnoroks cost me more.
True.
And they're a high value target, and you can kill them with cannons.
All things being equal, I'd actually agree with that. I couldn't really hit the things in the first turn.
You could hit one.
You could hit one, yeah.
Yeah, you could have actually put everything on him, and you could have dropped him in the second turn.
I could have put 1 or 2 cannonballs on him, that would have helped. In the end, the Arachnarok really only chased away 1 unit of handgunners, though. The chariot did get through, killed the target, and he probably should have killed it in turn 1. And those chariots were always going to hit first, so I didn't need to waste them. Unfortunately, one of those chariots, everything I threw at it, turn after turn after turn, and the bastard just waded through it all and came and killed a carrion anyway.
I had enough on that flank to answer your challenge. So the gun line was strong, but not sufficient against the charge.
Yeah, and look, there was too much stuff. The gun line was always going to fail. It just needed to kill more before it did.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I think I massively overinvested in the gun line. I won't do that again.
The real hero last turn was the Gobbler. The Gobbler did most of the damage. The character was good, but the Gobbler did massive damage.
We worked out the Gobbler and Skarsnik are worth almost as much as a fully taught up Dwarf Lord, and I killed him in the first round of combat with a bunch of sixes. Which is, yeah, look, what can I say? There's not much you can do about that. I'm pretty impressed with that unit of dwarfs actually sticking around as long as they did, because the unit of dwarfs is only about 240 odd points. Skarsnik is worth more than that by himself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that stymied that flank, but I think sooner or later, probably within a turn or two, they're just going to be gone. I was very disappointed in my rank and file. Normally it's a Death Star, that big massive 49 odd. They're only ordinary dwarf, but they've got great weapons. They normally just meat grinder, that's chop everything it faces them.
But you were against my Death Star. So the two Death Stars met, and I had a general and a battle standard in there, and they met on my terms. I think I charged you with War, and that could have been a good start for the combat.
But every turn they fought, they've killed a lot less than they should have. My tactics today were not great. The army selection was shit. It was an experiment, and it was a failed experiment as it turned out.
Gun line was an experiment.
Yeah, no, that was dumb.
Yeah.
And
Can I just say for the audience that are listening, Chris doesn't normally play with a gun line with his dwarves. He normally plays with rock solid blocks of units, and he has units that he brings in reserve, and they quite often hit my rear gun lines. So he decided not to play that game today, and I think the combination of things happened. One is his plan for the gun line didn't work. The second is my dice rolling for the first 4 turns was amazing. And dice rolls can make a difference to the game, particularly if you roll exceptionally well for 3 turns in a row. It gave me an edge.
Yeah, I'm normally reluctant to blame dice, and I think in the last battle report I put up, I was talking about this because some of my dice rolls didn't work, but then we realised on reflection of the game that being reliant on those dice rolls was a dumb thing to let happen in the first place, because in that game the army selection could have been a lot better, and if I'd done that I wouldn't have needed to rely on the dice. So that was a lesson in list selection. And the same sort of lesson in list selection applies to this game. That said, Emilio is killing probably about 50% more than he should have every single turn, every round of combat for the first 3 turns of the game. So it was extremely painful trying to make any headway.
And the Goblins were just as vicious as the Orcs, and that block of Goblins are intact, largely intact.
They did a little bit.
But the character...
But the character, and in fact his... not even the character, his bloody squig did most of the damage.
Yeah, the Gobbler, yeah.
And because of that, the casualty rate on that unit wasn't too bad. The main problem with that unit was my general got nerfed in turn 1 with a bunch of 6s.
I think Chris said earlier on, it was a mistake tactically to charge that Goblin block on its own without support.
Yeah, but you know what? They would have ended up in melee anyway, because he just would have charged me the following turn. And that would have been fine for the line. They would have got extra parry attacks. But as it was, when I charged, I got extra strength. So I think the problem was that my general got killed by a character assassination monster.
Yeah. Killing blow.
With killing blow, yeah. Mm. So, you got to roll with it. It's Warhammer. It's not exactly, it's not chess. But that was a bit of a...
But if you have a look at him, he's not just a squig. He's a gobbler, and he's a character figure. And I'd say that he's used all of his sharp teeth to take that general down with that killing blow. So thanks to him, this was the turning point in the game. The other comment I want to make is about the terrain. The terrain was advantageous for a gun line because there was a lot of open terrain, a lot of objects that you could see, but you had no choice but to hit everything on my right flank. So all your gun line was focusing on one flank. It didn't have the opportunity to shoot in the middle or shoot to the left flank to soften any of my units. So I think I did well to put pressure on that gun line, even though the terrain was to a gun line advantage.
Well, that's true. I mean, it was a bolt thrower advantage too, and those fucking snipers wasted, 3 war machines?
Yeah, in the end, yeah, it did quite well with my spear chuckers. And the spear chuckers aren't very expensive. I think I paid,
40 points?
45 points or something, compared to cannons that were 120 to 140 points. But you know what? It was a good game. It was, I think, a good matchup. Chris and I didn't think it would go one way more than another. We thought it was a pretty evenly matched game at the beginning, but things just certainly worked in favour of the Orcs from turn 1.
Indeed. Well, all right, on that note, what have we learned?
I think the balance of my army was just about right. I think I had enough speed, I had enough hitting power. I positioned them in the centre with support to the left and right flanks. Chris, I think, on the other hand, the army wasn't as balanced as well as it could be because I didn't see his units use the support that they would normally have available to them in a charge.
True. And look, for the sacrifice of 1 or 2 handgunner units, I really only needed 1 handgunner unit and plus another cannon, I could have had a block of iron breakers.
Which could have been the support unit.
That would have swung the centre and that would have made all the difference.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think probably wouldn't have made it, given how ineffective the handgunners were, it wouldn't have made a difference really to the effectiveness of the gun line. But one lives and learns. You've got to try experiments from time to time. And look, somebody else who's more familiar with the gun line army might have been able to make it work. For me, I haven't played Dwarves in quite a while, and I've not played gunline probably since sometime in the early 2000s. So, it happens.
If you've got an Orc and Goblin army, I just want to say this is one for the Orcs and Gobs. And they're very competitive. They're a great army to play.
They are. They're absolutely devastating. Those Black Orcs are very dangerous. They really need an elite unit to go up against them. And there's all kinds of weird and wacky nasty things riddled throughout the whole fucking army. Oh my lordy my. Anyway, on that note, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Feel free to like, subscribe, all that business, and definitely time to call this one a night.